All right. Let me know when you see it, Jordan, on there. Should be live.
Yep, there we go. All right, we all ready to go?
We are.
All right.
Just adjust this. And I'll give you guys a countdown. All right. 3, 2, 1.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jordan Ostroff with Legalese Marketing, and this is Exhibit A Attorneys, where we teach you how to be an Exhibit A of the successful attorney, and we'll highlight the stories of a number of other successful attorneys. Joining me today is Greg Eisenberg, also of Legalese Marketing. We're going to utilize this first show of 2021 to talk about executing your marketing plan in 2021. Greg, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me today, Jordan. Excited to be chatting with you again today.
So, for those people who don't know you, can you give them a little bit of your background?
Sure, definitely. So my background is mostly in the marketing space. So originally from South Jersey, right outside of Philadelphia, came down here to Orlando to attend UCF, and afterwards I got to the marketing industry, working for a bunch of agencies. Recently working with some big accounts such as University of Toledo, University of Central Florida, Darden, Cinnabon, and countless others. And I really connected with Jordan when really started wanting to hone in on a lot more service-based industries, a lot more local businesses. And we were able to really turn Jordan's law firm marketing around and really start digging in, on what data matters, what tactics are going to produce the best return, which really led us to wanting to help more law firms be better at not just their marketing efforts, but how they're finding out if their marketing efforts are working, and everything across the gambit. So again, excited to be here and start diving in and helping people again start executing their marketing plan, not just planning it, not just keep kicking that can down the road, but really getting started this year with a good plan.
So, I guess let me start here. When we talk about marketing plan, I mean, what are we really talking about?
Sure. When you're planning marketing efforts throughout the year, it gets so easy to almost have these puzzle pieces be so separate. Facebook ads come up and you're running those, and then somebody gives you a good idea for another campaign or for Google ads, and you start running these different placements. You start having your efforts in so many different areas, and next thing you know, none of your efforts are streamlined. And when you're talking about your marketing efforts, when you're talking about your overall plan, if these aren't working together, they're not going to work at all. And so really the biggest thing here when it comes to planning your marketing efforts is how do each one of those tactics, anything that you create, any of your creative assets, whether those are designs or articles that you write, how do each of these pieces of the puzzle connect together? So that's really what that plan is there to help you do, to kind of walk through that planning process, to walk through that execution process. And it's similar to a business plan where you might have all of these ideas in your head, you might have all of these thoughts in your head of how your business should run, but until you really work through the notes and really write things down and put it on paper, sometimes you don't know what questions you need to be asking yourself.
So, I mean, are we talking about just a Word doc or a Google doc or something along those lines? Is that sufficient to put the marketing plan together?
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, I mean, you can start with a Google Doc or a Word doc and really just work through each facet of your business. Start with a little summary section, talk about where you were last year, where you want to be, just so there's a little bit of context there. And then, you just touch on each facet of your business, whether that's your website, whether that's your CRM, and how that connects to your organic efforts like search engine optimization and social media, and how that connects to your paid efforts like search advertising or retargeting advertising. And really, all of these different parts of your marketing plan should streamline together in one document where you can kind of read through it and see exactly how each of these pieces are going to connect, where each of these pieces are going to fall. And then as you're going through the year, you can always feel free to update this. It's a living document, it's not Bible. And you're able to go ahead and really adjust as you market. And when you look back at the end of the year, you're going to have a good idea of you wanted to do, what you intended to do, then what you actually did, and be able to put that against any reporting or results that you have to really make that next plan for 2022 and get in a good routine of really planning and executing your marketing efforts.
So, is there a certain level of specificity or a certain amount of things that you have to have in your plan, or is it more is better, or is it the plan you're going to use or follow? I mean, how does that work?
So as far as like what you're actually planning, what you're actually going to follow, you don't want to do anything unrealistic. You don't want to hate yourself for not executing on every single thing that you wanted to, just because you decided to list every single tactic you possibly could. Um, you want to get as detailed as possible, though, especially on these tactics, because it's going to answer questions for you. The first thing is, how much are you spending on each of these tactics, whether it's designing assets and the manpower to do that, or whether it's like actual ad spend for a paid tactic. You want to make sure you have that budget allocated. Until you write that down, you really can't, have a good understanding of what you need. And then the next is really roles and responsibilities. Who do what? It's great to have all these things on paper. Even if it's three things, who's going to do it? How are you going to actually execute it? Working through, who those individuals are that are going to take on that role, and what those responsibilities are, and what the budget is, again, to make sure that it does get executed properly.
So let me give you an example. Let me know if I'm wrong here. So let's say it's something where an attorney wants to commit to doing one marketing lunch per month. So they're going to reach out to people. Maybe they'll have their staff coordinate the actual timing of it, location, and then they're going to go. I mean, so that's what we're talking about for the marketing plan, is just having all that.
Yeah, definitely. How you're going to get more people to reach out to, who is going to reach out to them, if those meetings need to be rescheduled, what is the process in place for that? Obviously you are going to be the individual going and doing the actual lunch, but even include that, you know what I mean? That way everyone that looks at this document on your team can have a good understanding of who's doing what, and calling those plays.
All right, so then I want to move into today we're talking about executing the marketing plan. So kind of walk me through that. I mean, obviously, having the plan written down is going to be the first step, but then following through, I mean, it's going to be good written down if you don't do it.
Correct, definitely. The next step is really meeting with your team to go ahead and execute. If you've listened to everything we just said, then you have a document at this point that says who is going to be taking what roles and responsibilities. That even includes outsourced individuals. If you are working with an agency, if you're working with a freelancer, make sure you list that and what roles you're going to count on that for. Make sure everybody that is part of the process is familiar on what the process is. Nobody has any questions. And the more eyes that you get that in front of, whether that is, your significant other, or even your mother, or people on your team, people that you trust, the more eyes that you get that in front of, the better, because they're going to be able to ask you questions that you may not have included in the details. Obviously, you don't want this being public. You don't want the sharing with competitors and yada, yada. But if you have any trusted individuals that can help, ask questions that, you're not sure what they don't know until they tell you they don't know it, it's going to help fill in some of those gaps.
So when you're talking about having part of that outsourced to vendors or virtual assistants or other companies, how important is it to have them in that meeting with your internal team to make sure that everybody's on the same page, or is it something where you as the business owner can sort of run that, I don't want to say interference, but the meeting with the team, meeting with outside services?
Definitely varies. It matters who's communicating with who. If you have a designer and you have a marketing coordinator and they're going to be, talking a decent bit and going over the creative process, then you are really going to want to make sure that they are interacting and talking in this meeting. It makes sense to bring them into this meeting, even if it's a separate meeting. So there's not, your freelancer is not being bogged down with, internal details. But if it's a separate meeting and you have those two connect, that's going to be really crucial. If you have a project manager, that's really crucial. However, if you're a solo firm, maybe you have one executive assistant, and that executive assistant is doing so many other things, and you want to have a hands-on approach on your social media or your newsletter, then definitely a separate meeting is completely fine. It just really matters who during your process is going to be communicating. I wouldn't hesitate to bring a freelancer into this. It may cost an extra hour of their time. It may be worth paying for because it's going to save them a whole of a lot more time later having to ask you about context.
So we've got a plan written down. We've had our meeting with the team and hopefully any vendors. What do we do then?
At that point, it's putting processes in place and executing and actually following through with that, setting goals, making sure that if you are working with any vendors, that there is a process in place for you to receive reporting, communicate that reporting to your team. If you do not work with a vendor who's providing reporting, make sure you do have a reporting process in place, and set those checkpoints every month. You're going to plan out the month ahead for all of your content. You're going to go ahead and make sure that you're reviewing any analytics from the month before, any of that data, and making sure that your team is up to date.
So when you say execute that plan, I mean, are we literally just talking about following through on what you wrote down that you were going to do?
Following through on what you wrote down, and going through all that, but in addition to that, making adjustments as you go, keeping open to that, and making sure that your plan stays updated and your team stays updated. Things are going to change. There's new tactics that come out all the time. There's new ideas that are hopefully going to happen as you're going through your process, and you're going to need to make adjustments. And so again, keeping your team completely up to date, as you said, keeping vendors and your team in that collaborative state is going to be super important. But the biggest thing is, again, when you plan accordingly and you plan for what budget you're actually going to be able to utilize, and you plan realistically, executing right off the bat shouldn't be that much of a struggle, because the biggest thing is you've already planned ahead. You have this budget allocated. You're not planning for unrealistic resources that you don't have. However, not everything needs to start at once. So if you are starting a paid effort, you can kick that off right now, and that should help jumpstart some of your organic efforts. Your organic efforts and your paid efforts will help kickstart your retargeting efforts in a few months. So making sure that you plan out the year, you leave room to be proactive. But as you plan for the year, you make sure that you're taking a lot into consideration, and it's not just a blanketed plan. It's not just we're $3,000 on Facebook ads every month for the rest of the time. It's focusing on what your objective is and making sure that a few months out before a campaign starts, you're collecting the assets or producing the assets to execute that campaign, and making sure that, again, everyone stays on the same game plan. Your whole team is understanding of what's needed. Everyone's on the same mission. Even if you have to ask your team several times, hey, do what the goal is that we're trying to accomplish, or what are we trying to execute here, or what part of the marketing plan is coming next? You just want to keep everyone on their toes, following up with, what you're doing, and keeping the whole plan concise with your team.
So when you're talking about assets, what does that mean?
Assets can be anything from a video to an article to a graphic. An asset is anything that you're going to use in a newsletter, your social media, add to your website, things that you're going to promote. When you look at social media, when you look at advertising, even when you look at a website, this is really a means of getting assets in front of individuals. So getting information, getting designs, getting videos, getting articles in front of individuals. Website communicates that to your target market. Your ads communicate it to your target market. Your organic efforts communicate it to your target market. So when I say preparing assets, you really want to plan ahead and create any videos that you're going to need to have, write any articles that you're going to need to have, plan for any designs that you're going to need to have for your website, blog, for your newsletter, for your social media pages. The more proactive you can plan that, the less of a burden it's going to be on your team scrambling the day before to put together a graphic to promote, something your firm is doing.
So utilizing this video as an example, so we've got our logo up here.
Yep.
Our logo off to the side. So those would be two assets. Then we've got the entire format that we have of this with the different images coming in, and then we also have the video itself. All of those would be individual assets, right?
Yeah, but it's almost structured where those small assets around here, around the actual video, those were needed to produce the video, and then the video is obviously used for our organic content. We're going to write blogs based on these videos, so it's going to help our website. We're going to blast these in newsletters. We're going to cut these up and help promote these more. So as you can see, it's almost like the dolls, where you have a doll and another doll and another doll. You have assets to help produce assets that are going to be used for, hopefully marketing assets for your company.
There we go. How repurposing assets is like Russian nesting dolls. I see it.
Exactly. There you go.
From that. So I want to back up for a second. So obviously, to the extent that you are hiring an outside vendor to execute this, to run ads, to oversee them, I don't think the accountability of getting those done is a problem, because if they don't do them, you should fire them and find a different company. But for anything being done internally, so if you're going to have, the paralegal help you finish the newsletter, if you're going to commit to the lunches, if you're going to hire, a marketing intern to go do some of those things, what are some tips or tricks or advice you have in how to hold the internal team accountable?
Sure. Well, the first thing I want to do is back up about even the external team. There's going to be so many check-ins that you're going to want to make sure you have in place and make sure those are documented in your plan. And the biggest thing is you want to carve out time to review the work that's being done. They're going to send you the reports. They're going to send you copy that you need to review or designs that you need to review. I am not going to put any of our clients on blast. If you're watching this, you know who you are, but some of them owe us some copy review. And some of the times the hardest thing to do when you're so busy is carving out that time. So making sure that that's in the plan. If it's not yourself that's going to review it, that you have somebody trusted that's going to review it, or that you have time blocked out in your schedule to go ahead and take care of that. Because if you want to get a campaign up and running by, let's just say, a certain week, you're going to have to plan a little bit backwards to even make sure, if you're working with a vendor, that you're hitting the right milestones to launch on time. And again, doing the same thing when it comes to reviewing reports. You don't want to get 2 months ahead before you realize that there's something fishy in the reporting and you don't know. So it's one of those things that you want to carve out that time. Now, as far as your internal team, keeping them on track, it's really about just setting these baselines in meetings, making sure that you have accountability charts, making sure that, each project is broken down. It's not just, okay, who's posting the social media? It's, who's designing the graphics for social media, who's collecting the graphics for social media, who's writing the captions for social media, and who's scheduling social media, and who's been monitoring replies, and how many replies did we have, and how many comments did we have. And again, it's just making sure that everybody's in the know. Even if your designer is not the one that's responding to comments, they're going to want to know how many comments their design evoked and how many times or how many things they should change to possibly get more engagement in future posts. So this information is universally useful and valuable to your team. So again, making sure that you're setting these meetings, making sure that you're setting specific milestones that you want to make sure that you're tracking against or following, and making sure that your team is reporting back and forth to each other. Again, in an internally public setting, making sure everybody's on the same page.
You mentioned an accountability chart. Did I get that right?
Yes.
What's an accountability chart?
Accountability chart can be anything that you want it to be, but what ours is specifically is high level categories of thing that we're going to want to make sure we're paying attention to. So whether that's, client projects, ongoing client work, our social media, our website, our advertising, and then underneath each of those larger categories, we have specific tasks, and we're able to assign each of those tasks as well as add details for each of them. So there, you can use an Excel spreadsheet for an accountability chart, or you can use a program like Asana or Trello for an accountability chart. Really, it matters how far you want to go down the rabbit hole and how useful it is to you, because a lot of the software accountability charts are also going to be like project management tools. So you're going to get a lot more than with an Excel spreadsheet. However, you're going to have to pay attention to a lot more.
Gotcha. So do you have a recommendation for how frequently that team checks in with each other on that chart? I mean, is that a weekly thing? Is that every other week? Is that a monthly? Does it depend upon each individual project?
It's going to depend on the project. If you are, doing a major project, it's going to be a little bit less check-ins and more of, day-to-day communication. If you're doing something like, your weekly social media, calendars, or monthly social media calendars, but keeping up on your social media on a weekly basis, then you're going to want to make sure you have that touch point. So I would say weekly, but based off the day-to-day communication that your team should be having, whether it's you and vendors or your team and vendors or your team and your team, it should be a quicker meeting, more high level, and then, save a lot more of the in the weeds for people to do on a one basis.
All right, and so then to transition away from the accountability chart, I want to go back to talking about tracking the plan. And I think this kind of ties into what we're talking about. When it comes to that marketing plan that you're executing, how frequently should you be tracking the ads, the benefit of the lunches, the number of referrals you got, whatever it is along those lines? Is there a best practice there?
Constantly. You just want to make sure you're always in the know and what's going on. And with a lot of reporting tools nowadays, it's super easy to do that. The hardest part is going to be incorporating everything into one dashboard. There are softwares that will help you with that, such as like an agency analytics is one, or Raven Tools is another. However, that's to plug in a lot of the digital aspects of it. Stuff like your referral tracking that you may be doing in your CRM, like Lawmatics. That's going to be a little bit more intricate. You're going to have to work with some integrations to make sure that you're communicating that back and forth. But you should also be able to get some of that information in Lawmatics and manually, port that over if needed, just writing that in. However, when it comes to like your ads and your organic strategy, you want to make sure you're constantly up on that because you can be. With digital services now, it's a lot easier to get close to real-time information, whereas referral tracking or traditional advertising such as a billboard or TV is going to be a little bit harder to get some of those results until later. So when it comes to digital tracking, make sure you're really focusing on your UTM structure. I know we talk about this a lot in previous discussions, but a UTM structure is a way for you to track the landing pages and on your website and where this traffic is coming from. And you can see all of this in Google Analytics. So if your UTM codes are very structured and you can know that your traffic's all coming from Facebook or LinkedIn or Google, and specifically Facebook ad 1 or LinkedIn ad 2, you're going to be able to have a very easy way of navigating through Google Analytics and pulling a lot of this data out. And that's going to be easy for if you want to use a custom dashboard tool like Google Data Studios. You're going to be able to have this pull in a lot more organized than if your UTM codes and tracking is off for your paid advertising and even your organic advertising, such as like social posts and stuff like that.
UTM is unique tracking metric.
UTM stands for, sorry, I'm Googling this as we go. Urchin Tracking Module.
Is what?
Urchin Tracking Module. So, so nothing easy. But if you Google UTM Builder, Google has a good UTM tool that is completely free. And it's going to ask you the source of the traffic, the medium of the traffic, a keyword for the traffic, a campaign for the traffic. And you're able to kind of fill this out. So it'd be like Facebook as the source, organic as like the medium, or paid. The campaign may be, newsletter campaign if you want to do a paid campaign to drive people to your newsletter. And, the keyword may be ad to, because you have a few different ad variations. That's going to give you a URL that is the same URL you were going to use. However, it's going to have a little code on the end that nobody's going to be able to notice, nor will it affect the experience of the website. You copy and paste that into the Facebook ad or the Google ad or whatever ad it is. And when people click that link from the ad, it's going to go ahead and track where that traffic came from in Google Analytics. And you're going to be able to break down what source, what medium, what ad, what campaign, all of this traffic came from. And again, you can do that for organic sources too. So if you're posting on social media and you're using a blog link, you can do something like organic traffic from Facebook or for your newsletter. And this way, all of your traffic sources are tracked, and you can pull a really easy Google Analytics report in Google Data Studios that's going to show you where all of this traffic has came from. So it makes it really easy to go ahead and track your marketing plan as you're executing, because you're going to be able to see, any source that you have traffic coming from, how that is responding. Again, gets a little bit tricky when it comes to referral sources or traditional advertising. However, you can track your digital advertising this way, and your digital advertising, if you're using your marketing plan the right way, is really the traditional marketing helps drive your digital plan. If someone sees your billboard, sees your TV ad, that's going to help your search ads. So all of these things work together, but the digital ad is going to be digital ads and traffic are going to be a lot easier to track.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong here. So basically, from like if this is my website, so from a Google Analytics standpoint, it'll know they're on this page, they're reading here, they went to this page, whatever. The
Yes.
UTM though allows us to get information like they were on this page and then they went over. So they clicked on this Facebook link, they ran this ad, they typed this into Google, and whatever it is, it helps us know kind of both directions of that traffic, or both point where they before and after.
Correct. Every ad placement, whether that's organic or paid, is going to be assigned its own UTM code, and that's going to allow you to break down in Google Analytics, oh, all of this traffic came from Facebook, or all of this traffic came from Facebook ads, or all of this traffic came from Facebook ad version 1, and be able to kind of break down, where that traffic is coming from, and which of your marketing tactics is working best, working the least, could use the most improvement. Because besides that, you're going to be able to see the bounce rate, how many pages per session those users went to. If Facebook ads are having like a 90% bounce rate, meaning 90% of the traffic that came from Facebook left your website right away, you're probably gonna want to check your targeting, your creative, your approach. So it's going to give you a lot more than just how many people came there from the ad, but what those people are actually doing on your website.
All right, so we wrote down our plan, we had our meeting, we've been executing our plan, we've been tracking our plan. So now it seems like the 5th is the editing our plan or knowing if our plan is working. Is that fair to be the next step?
I would say, yeah, because you want to, like I said, you don't want this plan to be Bible. You want to be adjusting it as you go. If there's new paid tactics that come up, great. Maybe conferences are awesome for reaching your target audience. New conferences always come up. Maybe you want to add those to the plan, or maybe you have a great February and March, and in April you want to start increasing your advertising budget. You'll want to make sure that's added to the plan. Make sure that everyone sees that it's up to date. Even if you use something like Microsoft Word or Google Docs, you can use like change or recording the changes so you can see where you made edits throughout the year. But Google Doc will do that automatically for you. But again, it's a good way to, when you're planning 2022, look back at what adjustments needed made throughout this past year, and you can plan better accordingly for next year.
So I think, you focus on the successful execution, which I think is great, but I think that's easy. If I'm spending $2,000 on Google ads and I'm making $20,000 off of it, then let me put $3,000 in. I want to talk about adjustment in the opposite way. So if you have been executing the plan and you're not seeing the results, I think we probably need to talk about organic, paid, and personal stuff kind of separately here, right?
Sure.
Okay, so let's do ads. Let's do paid ads last, because I know that's going to be your biggest thing. So from a referral standpoint, from an internal marketing effort, any idea on the timeline that we need to wait to see whether or not that's working or what we need to change?
This one is not going to have as much of a timeline because you can get so much more immediate feedback. You know the people that are going to be referring to you the most, and you should ask them directly and get that feedback on what's going to make it easier for them to refer you people, and listen to what that feedback is and adjust, because there's not many times in marketing that you're going to be able to ask individuals directly, what should I change? How can I make your life easier? And referrals, you can. If you're finding that the people that you're networking with are not giving you the right referrals, or they're not giving you enough referrals, it's not about asking them for more. It's about making their life easier to give you more. And making those adjustments along the way is so much easier than any other tactic, because you don't have to make any more adjustments other than what you are doing versus, trying to decipher if you're targeting the right people or if you're, communicating the right message. This is a lot more, what am I doing? Self-evaluating, your processes in place for getting information from people who could be referral sources.
All right, so for this one, I think, so we're talking about, maybe give it 3 to 6 months, be talking to people during, and then see, how it's working. Is that like a fair timeline?
Yeah, or if there's somebody that used to give you more referral sources, politely asking how that dried up. Is there something that changed? Kind of evaluating that process. If it is somebody that you want to be a referral source and you can't seem to get them to refer you anybody, kind of evaluating what you're doing now. Have you referred them anybody? Have you had any real conversations with them recently and connected with them? Do they know how to give you referral sources or who you are looking for? And if it's that you have nobody that you know that could even possibly give you a referral, that's when you start looking at what events you could be going to. Obviously, with COVID, that's becoming harder and harder. So, what ways can you connect with people online? What hashtags can you be following to get into conversation? What Facebook groups or LinkedIn groups can you join to make discussions with people and schedule those virtual happy hours to make that connection, which then puts you in, that step four, which was, I know this individual. How do I get them to give me referrals?
Which is really interesting because we talk about the ability to like hyper target ads to people, but from the standpoint of what you would consider old school marketing, like the connecting or old school networking, connecting with people, building relationships, it's harder to necessarily find the right people because you're reliant upon a smaller number of options. You're relying upon a smaller area of people. You're relying upon the ability to connect in person or Google Meet or whatever it is, as opposed to with ads where you might have 100,000 potential clients that you can send ads to.
We joked about this a lot before, but the auto booking links are golden for this. The more that you're able to just shoot somebody a link and save that back and forth of scheduling a virtual happy hour, even if you use your CRM like Lawmatics or you use a booking system like Calendly or Acuity, and you set up kind of that, that auto booking where it's pulling from your calendar, you're able to set an automatic Zoom or Google Meet link. And again, the biggest thing there is, making that genuine connection, shooting them that link, putting the ball in their court, making sure that you follow up, making sure that you have a real good conversation, and make sure that it's clear what you're looking for, the people that you can best serve, and the way that people can best get that information.
So, all right. So now I want to transition into organic. So organic social media, personal brand type stuff. Not direct ads, but not like that one-on-one old school networking. What's the timeline on viewing success there? What's the timeline on seeing what's working? Like how long do we need to give those sort of efforts?
It's honestly a very similar process. However, you have to be more patient on when it's working versus not working. Organic social media and organic search are both two very, very long processes that you have to invest time in. Everyone knows time is money, but it is that investment that is needed to learn these platforms, to connect with people on these platforms. These are social networks. People do not want to talk to bots. People do not want to just get spammed. They want to socialize. They want answers to their questions. They want to have discussions. The more Facebook groups you're in or LinkedIn groups you're in, or the more people that you're organically, engaging with in comments or in groups, the more you're going to be able to have those discussions that are one-to-one, and take your conversation off of online and bring it to, again, whether that is, let's schedule a time to connect for a virtual happy hour, or let's find a time to hop on a phone call. Again, it gives you also a lot more opportunities to nurture those leads. Somebody that might be considered a cold lead because they don't need your services right away, maybe commenting back and forth on some photos is a good way to start that discussion up, make people more familiar with your personal brand, with your company brand, and really humanize interactions.
Okay. So I'm with you on that. Then let's go to the last one, ads. So when it comes to paid for ads, so pay per click, Facebook ads, ads, which are still a thing, I swear. How those we obviously are, I think you're going to have a shorter timeline to review whether or not they're working because you're going to be throwing potentially thousands of dollars down the drain if you're not doing them right.
Yes, definitely. The thing is, though, you should hopefully have an ROI sooner, even if it's just covering the initial spend, because these should be revenue generating. There are brand awareness ads that are a lot more for impress, a lot more to get eyeballs on your brand. You need to make sure your expectations are tailored to not expect the same results from that as possibly retargeting or search that are a lot more intent-based, bottom of the funnel. However, you should be able to start seeing the results from this fairly quickly, because all of these are using paid methods to drive traffic to your website. If you're using UTM codes the right way, you're going to be able to analyze how those results are on your website, and it's going to give you some real sense of this information. I'll give you an example. Display advertising, which are ads that you'll see just on run-of-the-mill websites as you're reading articles. Those are like billboards on the internet. They don't have an extremely high click-through rate. They're a lot more for impressions, and the people that click through to them typically want to get back to the information you were looking at. So don't have a high rate on the actual page. They don't stay there very long. However, if your expectations are set for that and you're getting the impressions that you're looking for, and when you retarget these people, you're able to get them to stay on the page longer and read more information, well, then it's working for you. But it may not have the KPIs you're looking for, but it's still working for you. But you should still be able to see that within a month or two. So you should be able to kind of judge these as you go. I'd say give any tactic 60 to 90 days to give you a real sense of things. Um, Especially if you're not spending a ton of money and it's kind of stretched out. If you're spending $50 on Facebook ads over, a month, you're not going to get a good sense over, what's working and what's not. But if you're spending some significant dollars, a couple $1,000s on any of these platforms, within a first few weeks, you're really going to have a good sense of what's happening. And then you can kind of make a final judgment after, 60 days, 90 days or so.
So, and this brings me to the point. So, another point. If we are sitting here where we're trying to execute our plan and we're not seeing the results from it, either we're not generating enough leads, we're not generating the right leads, we're not closing them, we're not charging enough, whatever it is, how do we find out what part of the plan is lacking?
This is where data is so important. Your CRM is going to tell you how your office is converting and where the holes are there. You need a good CRM in place. You need good processes in place to know when somebody submits a form on your website, when somebody calls your office, when somebody starts interacting with your office, how many of those people close. That's going to tell you one piece of the equation. The other piece of the equation is Google Analytics. That's going to tell you how people are interacting with your website. Are they all bouncing right away? Are they not knowing where to convert at? Are there even places to convert? Are there pages for them to read? Are they not reading anything? That's going to be another portion of the equation. And then the last is going to be the information that you're actually promoting. So your ads, your posts, how are those doing? Are those, getting good click-throughs compared to the impressions that they're drawing? The people that they're sending to landing pages, are they spending a decent amount of time there? So that's going to tell you whether your audience is doing well or the creative is doing well or not. Because those are two different things. The creative is, again, the asset that you're promoting and how you're communicating it. And then the audience is going to be, of course, who you're looking to reach. So if you're looking to reach if you're targeting the right audience with the right creative that's communicating the right message to them, driving them to a website or a landing page that communicates the right message and drives the point further home, and it's easy to convert, you'll see that part in your CRM and be able to track how your staff is interacting with them until they become a full-on client. So
it's interesting, there's so much of that push to talk about funnels, but ultimately I always think it's easier to look at it almost like a chain link. So we've got all these different links. We've got the ads on Facebook. We're going to a landing page. We're having them book a call. They're contacting the firm. They're doing the consultation. We're trying to close them. And it seems as long as you track that, it's easier to see where the weak links are, because if the data stops at that point, the weak link is either right there or right before it.
A funnel's good for two purposes, really. A funnel's good for planning your product offerings, making sure that as somebody moves further and further as a client, you're offering them the appropriate services at an appropriate rate to get them to be the strongest client possible at the end. Not applicable for every industry, but it is applicable for a lot of them. The other way to use funnels is for planning content or advertising. So we've talked about advertising tactics being at different points of the funnel, as well as, content being at and information being at different points of the funnel. And those kind of work hand in hand. Awareness is about, your actual brand. Consideration is about your services. Intent is about why you. And so if you pay attention to that part of the funnel, that's where it's applicable. But you're so right. When you're looking at your user experience or user journey, it really is a chain link. It's less vertical and more horizontal. It's more of, your ads and your organic lead to your site, which leads to retargeting efforts at one end if nobody submits a form, or if they do, now they're in your CRM and now your staff is trying to close them. You have your newsletters, you might have remarketing advertising. And again, it's more of a horizontal process to get them to the finish line. and possibly not even to a finish line, but more to a back to the top of the chain link.
Makes sense. So as we get to the end of this, I mean, is there anything else we need to make sure we cover?
No, the biggest thing, again, we talk about this all the time with new clients coming in. They, are using this service for this, or this agency for this, or this freelancer for this. And I mean, they're using literally those three different in the same marketing plan. And if their plan is not fully flushed out, if people aren't communicating, it's going to go haywire. You're not going to get the bang for your buck that you're paying for with any of these services or agencies or freelancers. And so it's really about making sure that from the start, when you get this launched, everyone's on the same plane. Everyone understands what the game plan is. And when you launch, you execute efficiently. You, again, make adjustments along the way. And when you get to the end of next year, you're going to have a good sense of what to do the following year, and what you're going to want to try the following year.
It's just interesting because I look at it like you're Frankensteining, or I guess Frankenstein's monstering a marketing plan back together. And in some respects, I mean, as long as you're pulling the data, it's easy to see like, oh, the hand's the problem, or it's the shoulder, or it's the head, whatever. Whereas if you're not tracking that data, then you just don't know why it's not working the way you want it to.
I'll tell you that the biggest, and I'll use that same example. Frankenstein's monster is actually the best result because at least all of the pieces and parts are stitched together. I don't know if you remember Addams Family, but they had the little hand that was walking by itself. That's like the worst case scenario. That means that one appendage is just kind of going rogue on its own. And so in this situation, you want to be Frankenstein. You don't want to be the little hand from the Addams Family.
or you just want to be a whole person with, committing to one specific company, one specific thing, one specific plan.
That's the best way possible. And of course, call us for that. I had to give it a little plug there.
So with that, I mean, anything else? What if
No.
no idea about the marketing plan? I mean, is that something you can help them with?
Yeah, for sure. If you need help with a marketing plan, definitely give us a call. It's something that we offer. We take a look at what you're doing. We audit what you've previously been doing, go over what those results were and the understanding of that, and again, transit that into a plan for moving forward. And if you haven't been doing anything, this is the perfect time to start. It's 2021, new year, new you. You're going to hit the gym and you're going to call Legalese and get started on your marketing services.
All right, and so one final question here. So throwing out everything else we've talked about for like the last 40 minutes or so, what's that one piece of advice that you find the most important, or what's that one newest craze coming up that you want to make sure people are aware of?
Honestly, and I want to just really hammer this point home. It's really actually making a marketing plan. I think there's a lot of times that with digital ads and Facebook ads and how easy it is to boost something, you lose track along the way of what you're signed up for, what you're looking to accomplish. Nothing works together. And the biggest thing that we're seeing across the board with people is, they're failing at their advertising efforts because these pieces aren't connecting. Their website isn't doing anything for them because these pieces aren't connecting. They can't figure out a CRM or what they want their CRM to do because these pieces aren't connecting. And so the frustration that happens and the failed dollars that go to waste if these pieces aren't connected is really the biggest crucial thing to focus on when you kick off this year. It's super important because it will make or break your marketing plan, truly. It's going to set your team, your vendors, anyone you work with up for success if everything's on the same playing field and everyone's on the same game plan. It's really that important.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Jordan.